Last night I was so depressed, and I went and got the Bible, and I turned to the book of Revelation. And if people would just get and read the Bible and read the book of Revelations, they would really turn around and straighten out. This is all we need to do, is just get the good book and read it, put it to everyday life.
Sisters, niggas, whiteys, Jews, crackers. Don't worry. If there's hell below, we're all gonna go.
And when people harm Americans, we don't retreat. We don't forget. We take care of those who are grieving. And when that's finished, they should know we will follow them to the gates of hell until they are brought to justice. Because hell is where they will reside.
Hello, and welcome to this 7th edition to my video synopsis, Colors, the Ancient African Connection. The following is a continuation of video number 6 about two 20th century descendants of Tui Dugatu and Lubazandi, the two young Kuzan and Akili warriors who brought the red and blue color phenomenon to the shores of America. The original young founders of the Crips and the Bloods idolized the Black Panthers as role models. The legacy of LA gangs today might have turned out much differently if not for the fact that the founding leaders of the Crips, Stanley Tookie Williams and Raymond Washington, the general of the 20th century patriot army of the color blue, were too young. They were too young to join the Panther leadership, and so no love lost, and true to their natures as born leaders, Tookie Williams and Ray Washington started their own young party of black power militants and called themselves Crips. They adopted the Panther revolutionary rhetoric and political ideologies as well as Panther style of dress, the legendary black leather coats. Every Crip had to have one, at least one, and so for a while during the early period called Crippin', anyone not a Crip member that wandered into Crip territory wearing a nice black leather coat would quickly be relieved of it by the threat of violence or worse. It was called, as I say, the Decade of Shame, the 10-year period between 1965 and 1975, when the FBI launched one of its most controversial anti-crime assaults on its own citizens. J. Edgar Hoover set into motion a covert operation to systematically eliminate radical leftist political groups as well as any individuals that J. Edgar felt posed a threat to American society. The Black Panthers, for one, was number one on the FBI's most wanted list of radical groups with a socialist agenda. Politically, J. Edgar claimed the Panthers were the greatest threat to the internal security of the country. The covert operation was named COUNTERPRO, an acronym for Counterintelligence Program. This arm of America's elite law enforcement agencies came to specialize in illegal surveilling, infiltration, discrediting, and disrupting homegrown domestic political organizations voicing opposition toward what they considered a capitalist system of haves and have-nots, a system of inequality designed to take bread from the mouths and the pockets of the poor working class people in order to fatten the bellies and enrich the bank accounts of the filthy rich wealthy class people in society. COUNTERPRO gave the FBI the green light to stage illegal clandestine attacks on the Panther leaders About a dozen were assassinated, jailed, forced in exile, and worse yet, victims of the chemical weapon crack cocaine that rendered so many urban jungle residents scarred for life, both mentally and physically, unless to self for society. Also, the fallout from J. Edgar Hoover's systematic dismantling of the Black Panther Party, gangster style, had a far-reaching effect on LA's outcast gangster culture. Elrich Cleaver, an OG Panther leader whom J. Edgar ran out of town, explained the gang dilemma during the Decade of Shame this way. As it was, the U.S. government chopped off the head of the Black Liberation Movement and left the body there armed. That's why all these young bloods are out there now. They've got the rhetoric but are without the political direction, and they've got the guns. Indirectly, the young, inexperienced founding leaders of the OG Crips of the west side of LA wound up casualties of that period between 1965 and 1975, another decade of shame. One young leader was cold-bloodedly killed in a drive-by shooting, and the other leader was executed on San Quentin's death row. Without central leadership, the Crips delved headlong into the trap of crack cocaine and the highly lucrative dope game. As a group, as young as they were, the Crips and the Bloods had entrepreneurial ambitions which made them vulnerable to be used as pawns in a covert network operation of high-level drug smuggling. And unwittingly, the Crips and the Bloods, as well as the Mexican gangsters, all became perfect vehicles to spread the deadly chemical weapon crack cocaine throughout their own urban jungle homeland. The highly staggering sums of money from selling crack cocaine allowed the Crips to arm themselves with the latest high-tech weaponry. Each splintered off set of Crip gangs went their own separate ways, well-armed and well-supplied with the well-disguised chemical weapon that they thought was a golden egg, crack cocaine. Chemical weapon, crack cocaine that they knew nothing about. They went into blind, greedily pursuing of new territory in which to peddle their newly found trade, which hit the scene like a godsend. They made mind-boggling profits that gave them the illusion that they were gods, and thus had the inalienable right to control all distribution of crack cocaine. The Crips launched an aggressive takeover campaign, seizing all areas of the city where crack cocaine was selling and bringing in big profits. Finally, the Blue Shadow reached deep, too deep, into the east side of town, where they were stopped dead in their tracks by an equally well-armed and well-organized coalition of Blood Street gangs. The leaders of several independent East Side gangs, seeing the Blue Shadow being cast their way, swore an alliance with each other, and thus formed an alliance, a powerful united front, armed and dangerous to ward off Crip aggression. Approximately the founding leaders of the East Side Gang Alliance named themselves the Bloods, for indeed they, the bounty hunters, the Pyrus, the Peace Stones, and the Eight-Trade Gangsters, just to name a few, did bleed into one another to form a united force to be recognized and feared. Leaders of the Blood Alliance apparently knew the importance of not leaving an enemy behind, and that the best defense is a strong offense, because the Bloods went on an aggressive takeover campaign of their own, seizing dope-selling territory and branding them with red graffiti. A can of red spray paint knew no boundaries, and neither do Blood graffiti artists who, without hesitation, invaded Crip territory and boldly spray-painted over any and all blue graffiti. Thus the deadly war between the Crips and the Bloods began, and waged on with no end in sight, an all-out gang war with strong, subtle ironies that few on the outside knew about, and none of the warned gangsters had time nor reason to consider. For one thing, the Crip-Blood rivalry was a war for territorial control of the distribution and sale of something these youngsters weren't aware was actually a chemical weapon. As I say, crack cocaine wound up destroying the lives of some of these gangsters' very own mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, as well as fellow comrades in the gang. The other irony, however, has a much deeper, far-reaching significance that spans the globe all the way back to ancient Africa. Unbeknown, to most as we watch the Crips and the Bloods navigate themselves into the history books, however infamously so, is the little-known fact that the Crips and the Bloods share ancient African history. Except for a few of today's triple OG ancestors of ex-plantation slaves, no ears beyond Africa have heard the tale of the inception of the red and blue color phenomenon. Surviving ancestors of Louisiana plantation slaves tell the story of two African warriors that landed in America, chained together aboard a slave ship. They arrived in New Orleans around 1850. The arrival of these two captured enslaved African warriors is what gave the birth indirectly to the Crips and the Blood. It all came to light as a result of events surrounding the highly controversial biggest high school football game ever. The newly elected Mayor David Shore overruled the UTLA and the LAUSD and sanctioned the controversial first ever grudge match football game between a red rag school and a blue rag school. Not just any two red rag, blue rag schools, but the two most gang-infected, highly feared urban jungle high schools in Southern California, Vermont and Santa Ana High School. The two major epic centers, the breeding grounds and gateways into Crip Blood gang culture. The Crip Blood rivalry and the ever-mounting hostility between these two gangs-dominated high schools was suspiciously being ignored by right-wing so-called anti-gang activists. It seemed as though certain government-backed watchdog law enforcement agencies were purposely turning a blind eye to the mountain gang warfare between the Crips and the Bloods, as if giving these kids room enough to bang and hang themselves for a major urban riot or a juicy gang war would afford law enforcement the opportunity to test the latest high-tech weaponry in the government arsenal. Ray Charles from his grave can see how explosively touchy the gang situation was in LA during this time. The mere mention of either school is an insulting manner from the lips of a student attending the opposite school could easily result in the lip server being killed or seriously beaten up. This is how thick the tension was in the air in and around Vermont High School and Santa Ana High School. Yet it was during this seething period of the LA gang wars that Mayor Shore himself, a right-wing extremist and strong advocate for aggressive law enforcement, signed off on the highly controversial football game between the Red Rag Vermont Vikings and the Blue Rag Santa Ana Warriors. The controversial Red Rag Blue Rag grudge match football game will be played at Shore Park, a newly built sprawling public amusement park and athletic complex featuring an outdoor athletic field for minor league baseball and soccer teams, along with a huge football, basketball, and indoor stadium to accommodate college bowl teams and high school football and basketball championship games. The impressive state-of-the-art public complex was named after Mayor David Shore for his outstanding 25 political career as a leading congressman, big business mogul, and shrewd philanthropist who tactically put his money where his mouth in political position on matters would best be heard and acted on in his best interest. Liberal critics of the mayor, however, bold and reckless idea accused Mayor Shore of wanting to Christian the opening of the newly built stadium by putting on a Roman-style gladiatorial contest using mere teenage boys as if they were real-life teams of gladiators chosen to entertain an arena full of bloodthirsty spectators. An early boycott of the game by the UTLA and the USDLA asking people not to come to the game was to no avail. People love football, and this particular event was billed as the first ever high school Super Bowl. What gave the upcoming big game this bloodthirsty crowd drawing appeal is the Crip Blood connection, of course. The very potential of the game turning into a violent gang free-for-all is what put this high school football game on the level of a modern-day Roman gladiator spectacle. In fact, its own level all over its own, unprecedented and never to be repeated.